March 3, 1943, port of Tunis, Tunisia. The Mediterranean sun beat down mercilessly as German supply officers watched exhausted platoons struggle to unload ammunition crates from transport ships. Each crate weighed more than 200 pounds and required 4 soldiers to maneuver it from the ship's hold onto the dock using ropes and improvised ramps. This was how the Wehrmacht moved its lifeblood through discipline, organization, and the raw muscle of its men. Just 4 months earlier, American forces had landed in Morocco and Algeria under Operation Torch. German intelligence reports spoke of strange American machines, mechanical lifting devices used at supply depots. To the Germans, such tools were unnecessary luxuries. They saw them as proof of American softness. But what the Wehrmacht dismissed as weakness would soon become the decisive advantage that buried the Afrika Korps under a mountain of supplies. A machine, the Germans mocked, the humble forklift, would quietly expose one of the greatest blind spots in German military thinking. The Wehrmacht of 1943 prided itself on efficiency and discipline, yet its supply system was astonishingly outdated. A standard German infantry division required 256 trucks and 2,652 horses, employing more than 4,000 men to move supplies from railheads to the front lines. Every soldier driving a cart or carrying a crate was one less fighting at the front. The contradiction was glaring. Germany had pioneered the blitzkrieg, fast-moving, mechanized warfare, yet its logistics still relied on the methods of the 19th century. Soldiers formed human chains, rolled barrels up wooden planks, and carried boxes on their backs. Meanwhile, American troops used machines to do the heavy lifting. What the Germans saw as decadence was actually a revolution in military logistics. Across the Atlantic, American factories were driven by a completely different mindset. In Buchanan, Michigan, the Clark Equipment Company had been developing powered material handling equipment since 1917. It began with a simple truck tractor for moving materials inside factories, but innovation didn't stop there. By 1924, Clark engineers added vertical masts and metal forks, creating the world's first recognizable forklift. The evolution continued through the Great Depression. In 1938, Clark introduced the carloader, a compact and agile internal combustion forklift that could lift heavy loads and stack them in tight spaces. By 1942, America was at war, and Clark had perfected battery-powered forklifts that could operate all day on a single charge. When the United States mobilized, these civilian machines became critical tools of war. To American planners, the forklift wasn't a luxury, it was a weapon of efficiency. By early 1943, American supply depots across Oran, Casablanca, and Algiers were alive with mechanical motion. Forklifts buzzed like worker bees between ships, warehouses, and trucks. A single operator could unload a truck in 15 minutes, a task that required a dozen German soldiers over an hour. And while the Americans worked in shifts, keeping operations running 24 hours a day, the Germans toiled under the North African sun until exhaustion halted progress. During the Battle of Kasserine Pass, German troops overran several American depots. What they found stunned them: rows of supplies stacked neatly on wooden pallets, labeled and arranged with mathematical precision. Forklifts moved among them, operated by calm, rested men. To the Germans, it looked absurdly indulgent. To history, it was genius. Between 1941 and 1945, American industry produced 297,000 aircraft, 193,000 artillery pieces, 86,000 tanks, and over 2 million trucks. But production alone wasn't enough. Those machines had to reach the front, and that's where the forklift made the difference. Ammunition manufactured in Michigan might travel thousands of miles. Forklifts loaded it onto trains at the factory. Forklifts transferred it from trains to Liberty ships at ports like New York and Norfolk. Forklifts unloaded it in North Africa, stacking it neatly into depots ready for frontline transport. The German method was painfully slow. Supplies were handled by hand, box by box, barrel by barrel. Every movement took time, every delay cost lives. In modern warfare, the side that could move material faster held the real power. When German officers reported American mechanical handling to Berlin, they were met with disbelief. High Command responded with lectures about German willpower and discipline. Orders emphasized longer hours, stricter routines, and patriotic motivation. But what they needed wasn't speeches, it was machines. The Wehrmacht's culture, born from Prussian military tradition, viewed hardship as noble. To suffer was to prove strength. To use mechanical aid was weakness. American military philosophy, influenced by industry and efficiency experts, took the opposite view. Human strength should be conserved, not wasted. At Tobruk, Germany's key port in North Africa, manual unloading limited throughput to 20,000 tons a month. Rommel's army needed 100,000. Ships sat idle for days. Supplies piled up on docks, men fainted from heat exhaustion. In Casablanca, American engineers used forklifts to push 50,000 tons through the same space 5 times as much, with fewer men. The difference wasn't just technology, it was mindset. By the spring of 1943, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel saw the writing on the wall. His once daring Afrika Korps was starving not of courage, but of fuel, ammunition, and spare parts. Rommel begged Berlin for mechanical handling equipment. None came. Germany lacked both the fuel and the industrial capacity to produce forklifts. Meanwhile, American electric forklifts ran silently, powered by batteries charged in the rear areas. They used no gasoline, a resource Germany desperately lacked. The result was devastating. At Medellin, Rommel's final offensive failed in part because his artillery couldn't be resupplied fast enough. The Desert Fox had been outmaneuvered not on the battlefield, but in the supply chain. When the Axis surrendered in Tunisia in May 1943, more than 230,000 German and Italian soldiers were taken prisoner, among them thousands of logistics officers. Shipped to the United States, they were astonished by what they saw. At ports like Norfolk, Virginia, forklifts unloaded entire ships in hours. At Camp Shelby, Mississippi, POWs watched American quartermaster units use forklifts to unload train cars, tasks that would have taken German soldiers days. Even more shocking was who operated them. Many were African-American soldiers, members of segregated support units. German prisoners who had grown up under Nazi racial ideology saw, with their own eyes, men they had been taught to consider inferior, operating complex machinery with speed and precision. For many, it shattered old assumptions. Machines made race, rank, and ideology irrelevant. Only skill mattered. After Germany's defeat in 1945, the Allies began rebuilding. Under the Marshall Plan, American advisors didn't just rebuild factories, they taught efficiency. Forklifts, conveyor belts, and mechanical handling became the new standard. By 1950, German companies were producing their own forklifts. By 1955, the newly formed Bundeswehr considered them essential equipment. The nation that once glorified manual strength now celebrated efficiency. Veterans of the Afrika Korps, who once lifted crates by hand, now worked in factories designing mechanical handling systems. They told a new generation, Germany didn't lose the war in its tanks, we lost it in our warehouses. By the 1960s, West Germany's mechanical handling industry was among the best in the world, exporting equipment everywhere. Meanwhile, East Germany, bound to Soviet doctrine, clung to manual labor and fell behind. By reunification in 1990, the difference was visible. West German warehouses ran on automation and precision. The East still relied on muscle and manpower. Historians rarely mention it, But the forklift quietly helped win the Second World War. It symbolized a deeper truth. Victory belongs to the side that moves faster, smarter, and more efficiently. The Wehrmacht believed that hardship built strength. The Americans believed that efficiency was strength. And in the end, efficiency won. No medals were awarded for warehouse work. No monuments stand for logistics. Yet every ship unloaded faster, every crate lifted without exhaustion, every bullet that reached the front helped turn the tide of war. By the 1970s, German engineers were leading the world in forklift technology, completing the circle of irony. The machine, once dismissed as weakness, became a pillar of industrial might. Today, in any modern German warehouse, forklifts glide across polished floors with computerized precision. It's hard to imagine that these machines were once symbols of decadence. The lesson endures. True strength doesn't come from suffering, it comes from innovation. And sometimes, victory doesn't roar across the sky, it hums quietly across a warehouse floor.